Good evening. I just went through a heart procedure, and I'm going to be honest with you. It made me realize something that honestly bothered me. I spent a lot of time thinking about being prepared, having plans, backup systems, thinking things through. And I've always felt like I had a pretty good handle on things. But sitting there, waiting, knowing I wasn't the one in control anymore, I realized something that I hadn't really considered before. What happens when I'm the weak point? Not my plan, not my setup, not my environment. Me. And I don't think we talk about that enough because it's not a comfortable thing to think about. There's a moment in situations like this, and if you've ever been through anything medical, you know it, when everything gets really quiet, no distractions, no noise, no movement, just you and your thoughts. And that's a strange place to be because we don't spend a lot of time there. We stay busy, we stay moving, we stay distracted. And then suddenly, you're not doing any of that. You're just laying there. And that's something that I had to sit with for a minute because I realized how uncomfortable that actually is. And for me, it wasn't panic. It wasn't even fear in the way people expect. It was clarity. And clarity can be uncomfortable because the thought that kept coming back was this: I've planned for a lot of things, but I didn't plan for this version of me. The version of me that can't step in. The version of me that can't fix anything. The version of me that has to rely on someone else. And that's uncomfortable to admit, especially if you're used to being the one that people rely on. Here's the thing. Most of us live in a routine that feels normal. We wake up, we go to work, handle our responsibilities, come home, repeat. And inside that routine, we convince ourselves we're fine because nothing's obviously wrong. Nothing's stopping us. Nothing's forcing us to slow down. And I don't think that we question that enough because it feels normal. So we push things off. I'll get to it. I'll check that later. I'll deal with that when I have time. And sometimes you don't even realize that it's catching up until something forces you to pay attention. And the problem is that routine gives you a false sense of security because everything feels okay until it isn't. When you start thinking about preparedness, you start building layers, plans, backups, redundancies, and that's a good thing. But it comes with a trap. You start to believe if something happens, I'm ready. But what you really mean is if something happens and I'm still at 100%, I'm ready. And that's something that I never really said out loud, but it was there. Because what happens when you're not at 100%? What happens when you're not even at 50%? What happens when you're completely out of the equation? I had a lift restriction. I couldn't do anything for a week. That's not comfortable. So most people don't go there. But that's exactly where my mind went. We'll invest in gear. We'll invest in systems. We'll invest in plans. But we avoid investing in the one thing that everything depends on: our health. And I don't mean that in a lecture kind of way. I mean it in a real everyday way. It's easy to ignore because it doesn't demand your attention right away until it does. And sometimes it's not one event. Sometimes it's something that you're still dealing with afterwards. It's not urgent until it is. It's not loud until it is. And that's what makes it dangerous. And here's the part that I didn't expect. It didn't just end when the procedure was over. You think it does. You think it will. You think that you move on. But that's not how it works. Since then, I've been dealing with high blood pressure. Not emergency level, but high enough that it has to be treated. And here's the frustrating part. So far, nothing's really worked. And that's something that I have to deal with because it's different when it's not one moment. It's ongoing. It's waking up and thinking about it, checking numbers, trying things that don't fix it. And that's uncomfortable in a different way because now you're not reacting to something. You're living with something. I found myself thinking about things that I didn't expect. Not the big dramatic stuff, just real life, family, responsibility, things that I still want to do. And it hits a little different when you realize you might not always be the one holding things together. I'm not telling you to overhaul your life. I'm not telling you to become someone different. I'm just telling you that you shouldn't ignore it anymore because ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It just delays that moment when you're forced to deal with it. You can have all the plans in the world, but none of them mean anything if you're not taking care of the one thing that's holding it all together. And sometimes that's not a one-time decision. Sometimes it's something that you deal with every single day. Because at the end of the day, it's about staying healthy long enough to matter.